Right then, let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 2-on-1 Power Chair Football Podcast, now proudly powered by MK Battery, who will be the official podcast sponsor for the 24-25 season. MK Battery has been a massive supporter of Power Chair Football for years, working closely with the Wheelchair Football Association to provide the essential batteries that power our chairs. Their commitment to the sport goes far beyond just providing equipment. They've played a key role in supporting players and helping to grow the game at all levels. And we're delighted to have their backing this season to bring you even more great content. My name is Ryan Sipple, and alongside Alex Dowding, we'll be your host throughout the 24-25 season, where we'll be recapping all of the action from the National League, bringing on some fantastic guests and diving into exciting stories from within Power Chair Football. For today's episode, myself and Alex will be covering all the key moments and action from Game Week 1 of the 24-25 Optegra Championship. For all of those unaware, Optegra are a leading provider of eye healthcare, specialising in vision correction, cataract surgeries and other advanced eye treatments. And with a reputation for excellence and a commitment to improving patients' lives, Optegra operates a network of eye hospitals and clinics across the UK. So the 24-25 season of the National League will be referred to as the 24-25 Optegra Premiership and the 2024-25 Optegra Championship. So as we always do in our National League reviews, we'll take a look at the league table, go through each team's performance so far, we'll talk about how they've fared, highlight individual players and mention key moments from the latest round of fixtures. Alex, how are you?
I'm very well, very excited to start our season's worth of podcasts. We've got some fantastic content and ideas lined up for the season. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you reviewing Power Chair Football and our National League as we regularly do. And delighted we've got our new sponsors in Optegra to support the National League as we go along, and MK Battery powering this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's just a testament to the work that's going on behind the scenes to continually evolve and develop and just put that spotlight on the sport of Power Chair Football, and organisations such as MK Battery are really helping to enhance that. So, Game Week 1 of the Championship. What were your overall thoughts on the opening weekend, Alex?
I thought it was the best opening weekend we've had for quite a while. There was action galore, loads of goals. The standard of football across the division is now probably the highest I think it's ever been. I know we say that fairly regularly, but this season I think that's the case again. Testament to all the teams working hard, training hard in the close season, developing their football, developing their styles of play and raising the standards. Some great football being played in the Championship right now.
I think it was an interesting one going into Game Week 1 of the Championship because from my perspective, certainly, I don't feel there was any one team that you could have tipped to be favourite for the league, and that's probably the first time in a long time that's been the case. Last year there was a big expectation for Greenbank to go on and achieve good things, which they did. Middlesbrough were developing, and obviously Norwich saw themselves get promoted via that Premiership playoff that we held back in July. But for the first time, if you was to place a bet as to who you thought the league winner would be, asking 10 different people, you'd get 10 different answers.
I think that's a very fair point, and certainly people's favourites going into the weekend that I was talking to, some of those didn't perform as well as was expected, and other teams really put on a show. So it's made for an interesting looking table at the end of game weekend 1.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 new teams, or technically 4 new teams in the championship that finished the 23-24 campaign. As already mentioned, Greenbank, Middlesbrough and Norwich saw themselves get promoted to the top tier of National League action, meaning that Nomad Knight, Manchester United and Hull and East Yorkshire were relegated. So from the teams that finished last season, we've seen Manchester United come into the division, Hull and East Yorkshire come into the division, and now Nomad Knight, who have kind of disbanded, rebranded and reformed under GBG Knights, and they had a fantastic weekend. We'll get onto them very shortly, but looking at the table, our eyes are drawn straight away to Muscle Warriors. 5 games played, 5 games won, 14 goals scored without conceding, with 15 points to their name. Give me your thoughts on Muscle Warriors, Alex.
I thought they had an absolutely outstanding weekend. They looked well organised. They looked motivated. They were attacking, pressing football, really going and taking the game to their opponents. And they've got that performance has definitely put them in the mix for the title. Not just the results, but also the manner and domination of some of the games that they played. Alan Murray's done a great job off season, organising that team and getting them to put together. And 2 players in particular stood out, and both of those made the starting lineup for the team of the weekend. Jacob Vickers and Rikin Shah, and Alan Murray was also voted Muscle Warriors PFC head coach, so head coach of the weekend, in the team of the weekend as well. So 3 members of the team making the team of the weekend just shows the level that they were playing at and what they were doing.
Yeah, obviously I oversee the team of the weekend competition, where I kind of take in and process all of the votes, and it could have been more than just the 3 Muscle Warriors players and coach present. I know Hannah Hindley, who's recently transferred from Leeds Dynamos, received many votes and acknowledgements across the weekend. Provides a fantastic foundation for their attacking players to build upon. So that was a real coup for Alan Murray. You've mentioned how much of a fantastic weekend it was for the Muscle Warriors coach, and I will echo that completely. And it was a time of uncertainty for Muscle Warriors coming into the season. They saw Reece Mallett depart them to join GBG Knights, and I think he's been present in that Muscle Warriors team for maybe 5, 6, 7 years. So having such a key, significant presence and player depart them always leaves that degree of uncertainty. I know Dylan Palmer has hung up his boots from National League football, so another player going out the door. So they've had to backfill that experience with development players. So they've brought in both Stanley Ball and George Shippey from Sevenoaks, technically kind of like a loan type short-term transfer situation, where 2 players who had only exposed themselves to regional league football prior to National League game week 1 of the Championship, and they slotted in seamlessly. And I just feel Muscle Warriors is this perfect amalgamation of experience and youth now, where players such as Jacob Vickers and Rikin Shah can provide really fantastic examples for the younger players, and there's no reason why they can't continue that sort of form going forward.
Yeah, totally agree. I think they've got a nice little setup there at the moment, and a good balance across that squad of young players, experienced players, and they just looked exciting. It was good.
Yeah, they opened their account against Nottingham Forest, which they won 5-0. That was followed by AFC Bournemouth Warriors, which they won 4-0. Probably their toughest game on paper, certainly for the Saturday, Villa Rockets Lions. They just were so professional. A brace from Stanley Ball, competing in his first ever day of National League football, to come in and slot two past a very experienced Villa Rocket side that had Mason Hindley and Nicky Baker operating in that kind of 1-2 pivot. And Sunday, tougher for them. Certainly watching them on commentary, they had to dig in against Sale United and Teesside Steel, but 2 wins without a goal conceded just shows how much they've come on and put themselves in the driving seat very early on to be considered for promotion, if not that ultimate title.
Totally agree. The caveat, of course, is that GBG Knights in second place do have a game in hand. Now, if they were to win that, their goal difference would be better than Muscle Warriors after 5 games. They've got a plus 19 at the moment, played 4, won 4, plus 19. So that would put GBG Knights just above Muscle Warriors. So there's a battle already developing, and goal difference is already significant.
Yeah, at GBG Knights, a similar degree of uncertainty coming into game week 1. As already mentioned, they kind of disbanded from Nomad Knights, rebranded. They've got a new look, a new logo, a new feel, and they've reformed under the banner of GBG Knights, which is, of course, under the charity Goals Beyond Grass. And on paper, technically, 4 transfers coming in to the squad. Certainly if you're comparing it to Nomad Knights that ended the 23-24 season. Reece Mallet, as already mentioned, joined from Muscle Warriors. Jack Ewins from AFC Bournemouth Warriors. Oscar Smedley been promoted up from GBG Saracens. And Troy Willicombe rejoining from Villa Rockets Lions. Despite some real talent coming in, it was one of the mainstays of last season's team. That was probably the standout. George Holloway, 15 goal contributions across game week 1. 9 league goals, 6 assists. Absolutely incredible form from George, which is further emphasised in the fact that he was unable to score a single goal last season.
Yeah, and a lot of those goals, though, were also probably classified as team goals. So I think that although he was prolific in terms of the finishing, I think it's also right to say that the style of football that GBG Knights was playing under Kai Shah as their coach is very attractive. It's lots of passing, some lovely triangles, lots of movement, and often finished at the back post by George Holloway, as you mentioned. But equally, the 6 assists show that his contributions to the rest of the play is also significant, and that's borne out with the plus 19 goal difference over 4 games for GBG Knights. Very impressive.
Yeah, and a player that I want to spotlight particularly is Oscar Smedley, another player making his National League debut, certainly in a competitive division. He was, of course, present in GBG Saracens' narrow defeat to Nottingham Forest in the Championship playoff at the back end of last season. But in terms of competing across a game week of the National League, it was his first, and he just slotted in seamlessly. It's a testament to the development that is occurring across the regional leagues in the country, but also the level of talent at that sort of age bracket. Oscar Smedley recently enrolled, or very recently enrolled, on the FA's Regional Emergent Talent Programme. So he's on the ladder now to develop his career and hopefully achieve fantastic things. But 8 assists across game week 1. He leads that, having 2 above Ricken Shah on 6. So it's very exciting times for GBG Knights, certainly considering how much difficulty they've had in recent years.
And George Holloway also on 6 in joint second place with Ricken from Muscle there. So the top place and joint second place, both players for GBG Knights. 14 goals in total between them they assisted, which goes to show out of 19 just how much team play and passing manoeuvres are being executed by them for scoring those goals and making those opportunities That's not the only ones that are assisted, but certainly 14 out of the 19 assisted by two attacking wide players. So it just speaks to the type of football they're playing and how that goal average per game of nearly 5 is just how prolific they are. And teams are going to have to come up with some interesting plans and clever tactics to try and nullify that attacking threat that they have.
Yeah, I think game week 2 will be that perfect barometer to gauge GBG Knights. Taking place on the 23rd and 24th of November, they have a tough round of fixtures. They start against Teesside Steel before playing Manchester United and Hull and East Yorkshire. And then on Sunday, they play West Bromwich Albion, Dudley and Manchester City. So a 5-game weekend awaits them in November against some of the Championship's top teams. So yeah, that will be the barometer, but they've started absolutely fantastically. As you mentioned, they have that game in hand over Muscle Warriors with a more favourable goal difference. So if they can continue that sort of form, they will without question be in consideration for promotion, if not titles, come the end of game week 5. But still lots of football to be played. Lots of things can change in that time. We then and now move on to Manchester United. So Manchester United relegated from the 23-24 Premiership, having struggled slightly, having leaped up the season prior. But they started really well in game week 1 of the 24-25 Optegra Championship. 4 games played, 3 games won, 1 game drawn. So yet to see defeat. One thing that I want to get your thoughts on, Alex, obviously they've got a really nice accumulation of 10 points. They only scored 4 goals and they didn't concede.
Yeah, so it was a 2 1-0s, a 2-0 and a 0-0. Looking at the fixtures they had, they probably had quite a tough weekend in that respect. Villa Rocket Lions, who most people, or a lot of people were thinking would be doing well this season, didn't have the best weekend, but nevertheless they've got a strong side. Sale United, which is obviously a local derby for them, an inter-club fixture. Obviously lots of tension and lots riding on that one. Hull and East Yorkshire, who came down from the Prem last season, and Teesside Steel, who up and coming young side. So they didn't have the easiest set of fixtures, but that also speaks of the difficulty of the Championship this year. So I think we can say they look well organised. They might not be quite as prolific going forward this weekend as they need to be for the rest of the season if they're going to look to challenge for either a promotion spot or a playoff spot. But they certainly look tidy, certainly looks organised, and look like they had a good spirit amongst them as well. Look like they're enjoying their football. Yeah,
I think it has to be caveated with the fact that they had a very thin squad for game week 1, just with the 4 players present, so weren't able to make any changes or substitutions across their 4 fixtures. So that further emphasises and probably shows how brilliant them results are on paper. Slightly different look inside that finished the 23-24 campaign. They've seen the departure of Jake Hudson, who has joined sister club Sale United to take on a player coaching role. Shannon Smith has gone the other way, so she's joined from Sale United to join Manchester United's ranks. So yeah, no, thin squad, but I have to commend Kieran Burns, who operated in the centre across Manchester United's opening 4 games, was so strong, so vocal, and put on some real key moments and assists for his teammates. I think it was for 3 goals for Sam Taylor. 2 against Hull and East Yorkshire, 1 against Sale United, and I think the other one was scored via an own goal. So lots of talking points. Have to give full credit to Pete Taylor. I think tactically he was brilliant. I think he openly acknowledged the fact that he didn't have any substitutes, so couldn't switch things up tactically. But I think that played into Manchester United's hands, and I referenced it on commentary that whilst having no substitutes would all typically be seen as a hindrance, I think it aided Manchester United's performance in a way that they could just develop as the game grew on, and their four players could establish a fantastic level of chemistry that would probably be negated or fragmented had they made substitutes throughout. Certainly, I think in the game against Sale United, and it's definitely their 2 goals against Hull and East Yorkshire, came in probably the final quarter of the game. So whether it was by design, the fact that they just sat back, they absorbed some pressure, and then they capitalised later on. Another talking point before we move on, I thought Josh Slack was absolutely brilliant. He was brave. He contributed in attacking phases of play in almost a very conservative 4-out system where he didn't shy away from advancing up the court to be that fourth player in attack, which is ultimately what I would love to see across all of our teams, kind of West Bromwich Albion England-esque.
Yeah, the 4-out is definitely becoming more popular as teams get their heads around where the risks are, where the benefits are, and how to implement it in their own styles as well. So there's not a universal 4-out system, but certainly having players that are comfortable in that and therefore understand the principles and the basics of it is working wonders for lots of teams and lots of clubs. And as teams and coaching progresses, I think that will be continued to see that rolled out.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we move on, just one talking point. Game week 2 of the 24-25 Optegra Championship sees Manchester United take on Manchester City. So we're going to get ourselves a lovely little Manchester derby to open things up, the first kickoff of game week 2. And I think the first time they've ever played each other at National League football, because Manchester City came into the league last season when Manchester United were promoted to the Premiership. So we're going to see that big, fiery Manchester derby.
I think form also on that one favours United at the moment. Certainly league positions and the results from game week 1 would suggest that's the case. So all the work and all to do for Manchester City.
Absolutely. So next up, West Bromwich Albion Dudley. A strange weekend for them. We're going to reference individual transfers, and for context, there's been more. I believe there's been more individual player transfers than ever before in an off season, and certainly how I tallied it up, there was 17 players that have transferred in or transferred up into squads for the Championship alone, 7 of which across game week 1 were regional league players making their debut. So it's going to be a common occurrence that when we're referencing teams and their performances and how they fared, we talk about that new look, that transitional phase that's needed and that adjustment period that has to be factored in. West Bromwich Albion Dudley, no different. They are 4th in the league. They have played 5 games, 2 games won, 1 game drawn, 2 games lost, so 7 points. Key player departing them in Amy Lee Julian, very much deserves her call up to the Premiership. She was a standout performer across 23-24, and I wish her all of the luck competing with, I believe, West Bromwich Albion Throstles. But they've brought in Lewis Marshall from Manchester United, a player who I really rate. I think can add a real another element to whatever team he's operating for. Maybe he was mismanaged or misused or overlooked by Manchester United, but he's playing football now. He marked his debut with 2 goals against Manchester City, and I thought that kind of set the tone for things going forward for Dudley, a team of which, coached by Dave Lewis and Matt Gilbert, I have very high expectations for. What were your thoughts on them across game week 1, Alex?
Yeah, mixed weekend for them really, but they did have some tough fixtures that they came up against as well. But like you say, they're probably best described as a new team, not necessarily a new club in terms of West Bromwich Albion Dudley being an established National League team, but in terms of the players playing together and coming together. There's a bit of a new look with departures and arrivals. And I know Matty and Dave are working very hard in training. Had a couple of chats with them about some of the coaching over in the off season and bits and pieces. So I'm sure it'll all come together for them over the course of the season. But I'm not sure that game weekend 1 or weekend 1 would be representative of their season overall. I suspect they'll be one of the sides that improves and develops as the season goes on.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, there's some tough fixtures there. The GBG Knights, they conceded 6 goals, but they'd scored 2. So does show they've got an attack and a threat against even the top of the table teams. And the 5-0 against Manchester City was a really strong opener as well. So there's plenty of green shoots for Dudley to look at. They look like they've got an attacking threat. Maybe they need to be a little bit more resilient in places, and defensively a little bit tighter in places. But those are things that can be worked on and developed in training. And I think they'll be fine for the season.
Yeah,
maybe push for a playoff.
Yeah, I think defensively, as you've already mentioned, that's where they can probably adjust and improve. In attack, I will say with a degree of confidence that their passing patterns are probably the most exciting in the league. The way that they use Laura Evans as that central pivot, and they switch the play from wing to wing, typically between Jack Westmoreland and Jack Gorder. You're really seeing that Dave Lewis and Matt Gilbert DNA, something that's probably been instilled in them both at the various England levels or West Bromwich Albion. So definite green shoots, as you've already said. I think it's a big season for Noah Harvey, who impressed in the latter stages of last season, breaking in. A real creator, can put on assists, can strike a ball really well. Jack Gorder, there's an expectation for him coming into the 24-25 game, having got 15 goals and 5 assists across last season's campaign. So 20 goal contributions, one that he'll be wanting to match, if not better. And Jack Westmoreland kicked his 24-25 season off with a hat-trick against Manchester City. That almost matches his goal tally of the whole of last season, so he's got off to a really bright start. But yeah, young squad that's paired with elements of experience through players such as Laura Evans and, of course, the coaches. But exciting times, and I would not put that playoff position out of reach for them, if not automatic promotion. Game week 2 will serve as that real gauge point. They start against top-of-the-table Muscle Warriors before facing AFC Bournemouth Warriors. And then a tough round of fixtures on the Sunday against GBG Knights in back-to-back weekends before Villa Rockets Lions. So, no, really exciting stuff.
Moving on then, Leeds Dynamos. Had a good weekend overall. But at the same time, that's put them into 5th spot. Played 4, goal difference of 8, 6 points. So a couple of wins and a couple of losses. They lost to Teesside Steel and to GBG Knights, both 1-0s. So a good, strong defensive showing, even when they lost. I think they probably feel they could have got something out the Teesside game. But a 3-0 win against Manchester City, an 8-1 victory over AFC Bournemouth Warriors are the highlights for them over the weekend. And I have to say as well, they had a slightly difficult start for the weekend, as a couple of players were a little bit late arriving and probably threw them off slightly. But nevertheless, they did well with a 3-0 win, even given that scenario.
Yeah, I think within my notes and my recap of game week 1 for Leeds particularly, the statement that I've written down here is convincing win, narrow defeats. You'd want it that way rather than convincing defeats and narrow victories. So then 1-0 scorelines against certainly GBG Knights, who were absolutely prolific across game week 1, is positive viewing for their now coach Lewis Harris, taking Leeds Dynamos on. which is exciting to see, as is the case with many teams across the Championship being coached by Premiership players, England internationals and players that have been very much integrated into that England system. Lewis Harris, of course, one of them. Another team in transition, again, we're going to reference it time and time again. They saw the departure of Hannah Hindley, who was such a key player to the system they played last season and provided that same stability for Muscle Warriors. Jack McNaughton joined from Nomad Knights, a bright weekend for him. I think he got 5 goals to his name, so started the season exactly as Lewis Harris would have wanted him to. My point on Leeds Dynamos is, and this is probably a dilemma or question for Lewis Harris, but I will throw it to you. It's I believe the key to success for Leeds Dynamos is finding a system that accommodates both Liam Chadwick and Jack Humphreys. And I think if they can get that right, they will find some real success. 2 players who I think their best role is central. It hasn't quite worked when they've tried to use them in a 1-2 pivot. So if he can unlock that dilemma, I think there's success to be had.
I think you're right. I think there's probably more goes on at Leeds in terms of trying out new tactics and lineups and positions and positioning than probably most clubs. When you talk to Lewis and Jack, things like a false 4 out get mentioned and a 3+1, and they have a way of looking at the game and an approach to the tactics that is interesting, it's challenging, it's innovative. So I think there will get a system that works for them, and they will come up with a way of integrating all the players together. I think they might change it per game. I think that's where they quite like the flexibility in developing flexible players that can play in different ways to be able to neutralise and combat the opponents that they're coming up against at any one particular time. So I think we'll see different things from them over the season, and I think we'll see some innovative tactics and certainly field positions and chair positions from some of their players. So good team to keep an eye on and watch, and try and learn from what they're doing, work out what they're doing before we can learn from it, I suppose. A lot of the time it's a case of, what are they doing that for? But it's good to keep the game pushing on and developing, and Lewis is one of those that's going to do that. So great work from him so far.
No, absolutely echo all of that. Next up in the 24-25 Optegra Championship standings, we have Teesside Steel, probably one of the only teams that remained unchanged in the off-season in terms of coaching staff, player transfers, etc. So they've started the new campaign as they ended the last. So probably they have that level of chemistry that other teams are trying to cultivate and really try to create going forward. Brilliant Saturday for them, and I think the fullness of time is the one that you need. The fullness of time and context to say that it was a great Saturday. They were the only team to secure any points against Manchester United. It did end 0-0, but Manchester United beyond that game just seemed to secure wins against any and every opponent they faced. We've referenced Leeds Dynamos above them in the table as being a team that we tipped to compete right till the very end. They secured a 1-0 win over them very early on, which was fantastic. Really strong weekend from Jamil Khan, who really influential for the system in which they adopt. Oscar Mulgrew, typically utilised as the central player, very strong, playing in his second season of National League. Thomas Met puts himself in some fantastic areas, I have to say. He'd earned himself the nickname by WFA chairperson on commentary as the Poacher.
The Poacher?
The Poacher, indeed. He finished last season with 10 goals to his name, and you can see why. You can see, if you go back and watch Teesside Steel, the areas that he crops up in the final third. prove really difficult for the opposition or the opposition defence to mark.
Yeah, he gets into interesting regions on the pitch, and is there to finish moves. Loves scoring a goal, as Thomas. So he's a very valuable member of the side. Interestingly, Teesside played 3 teams that finished above them this weekend, and they got a win, a draw and a loss from those 3. And then they also played one other side that finished 5 places below them and only got a draw out of that. So quite a mixed bag of results, really, for them. So difficult to analyse in terms of where that places them for the season, and where that positions them going forward. Capable of getting great results against big sides, but also not necessarily capable of finishing off sides that they maybe should be, given the table. So we shall see how the season develops for them.
Yeah, on paper, certainly I would say they had the toughest round of fixtures in game week 1, and they were competitive throughout. Busy game week 2 sees them take on GBG Knights in their first game before facing Nottingham Forest, Manchester United, Villa, Rockets Lions and Sale United. So lots of exciting games for them to contest, and let's see how they fare across the remainder of the 24-25 campaign. They finished 8th last season, having secured 30 points from their 22 games. So in terms of how they finished, they're operating at a very similar level across the conclusion of game week 1. So ultimately, I think the goal or the ambition will be to surpass last year's achievements. But because of it being such a level playing field going forward, and any team can really stake a claim for promotion, if not the title, Teesside will want to challenge, and they'll want to potentially see themselves alongside their sister club Teesside in the Premiership.
100%. Right, let's move on. Position 7 in the table. One of our relegated clubs, Hull and East Yorkshire PFC. What were your thoughts on those, Ryan?
Yeah, recently relegated from the 23-24 Premiership, having finished bottom. Another team seen individual transfers and coaches leave them in the off-season. Their key player, Cole Simpson, has left the club for the first time in 5 years to join Newcastle United Foundation. So a fantastic move for him, and I wish him all the luck there. He's obviously broken into the FA's National Emergent Talent Programme, and I think he feels he has to ensure that he's playing football at the highest levels to maintain his position, if not kind of develop and maybe jump up into the England development squad, or maybe England senior squad in the next few months/years. They've brought in new players, so Aston Walls from Nottingham Forest came in to play a central role in the team's performances across game week 1. Anyone wanting to watch back Hull and East Yorkshire's games, it's not hard to spot Aston Walls. He's got neon orange hair, very appropriate to the orange feel around Hull. But it was a difficult start. They played GBG Knights. It was a 5-0 defeat. So not an ideal way to begin things, but they steadily grew into the weekend, and their position in the table is not representative of their performances. They went on to beat Nottingham Forest 2-0 after that, before a 2-0 defeat to Manchester United. I had the privilege of calling it on commentary. And as already mentioned, it took 2 late goals from Manchester United to break the stubborn press of Hull and East Yorkshire, and then 2 draws from their 2 games on Sunday. So the position of 7th, not necessarily representative of the level they're operating at.
I totally agree on that. I think we need to introduce a new feature. Hair watch or maybe power hair, and keep an eye on the various hair colours and haircuts that we see arrive on a Saturday morning at National League. There's quite a variety at different points. I think Aston wasn't the only member of the Hull squads over the weekend that would get a mention on our... Oh, what are we calling it? We're going to call it Power Hair or Hair Watch?
Either or, but Joel Rothery, their designated goalkeeper, was sporting some fantastic shades of blue in his silky locks as well. So I know Jacob Vickers was another, Muscle Warriors, who was just sensational across game week 1, securing standout player of the weekend. Another sporting a very beautifully combed mullet. But no, it's something to factor into things. But for Hull and East Yorkshire, I think there's positives.
I think you've missed one on the Hair Watch.
Go on.
Power Hair. I think, was Joe Kerrison also sporting some blue hair?
Very potentially. And on the top, he was one I was just going to go on to, because Hull and East Yorkshire have acquired both Steve and Joe Kerrison, who have transferred in from Villa Rockets Lions. They provide fantastic experience. And I just want to say congratulations to both Callum Jefferson and Harrison Smith. They both made their National League debuts and contributed as well. They didn't look overawed by the quality or the step up. And that's that balance now that I think the squad has. They've got experience in the likes of Kai Gill, Joe Kerrison, Steve Kerrison, paired with youth and enthusiasm. And I have expectations for them going forwards. I think that they'll be well clear of any of the bottom placements of the championship stand-ins. Whether they have enough quality amongst their ranks to challenge for a playoff or potential title, we will soon see. But exciting times, certainly considering the fact that it's most definitely a rebuild.
Yeah, it does look like a new team in some ways, bar the mainstays with Kai Gill and Joel Rothery, etc. But I think they'll, like you say, they'll develop over the season again. I know how hard they work, and they've got a big and good squad there to make a difference and influence the table over the course of the season. I think they'll start off mid-table, and I think they'll steadily rise, is my prediction.
Absolutely. So just before we dive into the next team in the 2024-25 Optegra Championship stand-ins, once again, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of the 2-on-1 Power Chair Football podcast, MK Battery, who have been a huge supporter of Power Chair Football for many years, providing the batteries that keep our chairs moving. Their involvement goes far beyond just supplying the equipment. They're deeply committed to the development of the sport, supporting players, clubs and competitions at all levels. MK Battery has worked closely with the WFA, helping the sport grow and making sure players have access to reliable, high-performance batteries, which are crucial for both training and competition. It's thanks to sponsors like them that Power Chair Football can continue to evolve and reach more people, and we're incredibly proud to have them as our partner for the 24-25 season.
Fantastic. Thanks, Roy.
Absolutely. So next in the stand-ins, currently sitting in 8th with 4 points from their opening 4 games, we have Sale United. I'll get your thoughts before providing my own, Alex.
Again, an interesting weekend for Sale. They had a couple of tough fixtures in that they had Muscle Warriors, who finished top of the table, and they've got their big rivalry with Manchester United as a game. Then the opening game against Villa Rockets Lions ended 0-0, which, given the rest of the weekend, they might be disappointed with. However, their second game, where they beat West Brom Dudley 2-0, you have to say was a real highlight and something that they can take a lot of confidence from and grow into for the rest of the season, because that's a great result.
Yeah, do not let their position in the standings fool you. Once you apply that context and you watch their games, you will see that Sale United were absolutely brilliant. Like Manchester United, a very thin squad, having only 4 players at their disposal for the entire weekend. Add to that the fact that 3 of their starting 4 players departed them in the off-season. Sam Turner leaving to join Villa Rockets Lions. Thomas Pettigrew has made the step up to join Middlesbrough in the Premiership. And Shannon Smith has joined Manchester United. They've brought in Jake Hudson, who's now part of the squad, an official coach supported by Jonathan D. But very, very narrow margins in all of their games. Villa Rockets Lions, 0-0, as already mentioned by Alex, started their weekend before they were up against a West Bromwich Albion Dudley side coming off the back of a 5-0 thrashing of Manchester United. And then on Sunday, 2 1-0 defeats to Manchester United and Muscle Warriors respectively. 2 teams in first and third currently, shows that they can be competitive right to the end. So full credit to them. One player that I want to shine a spotlight on is David D. David D, 13 years old, turns 14 in December, held his own in that central role against some incredibly tough opponents. So just going through the list, for Villa Rockets Lions, he was up against Mason Hindley, who we know is an incredibly tough, strong, physical player. Likewise with Kieran Burns of Manchester United, Rikin Shah, who was present in the team of the weekend, and Laura Evans. So 4 of the country's standout championship players is what David D had to face. And he did not shy away. So a really great weekend for him. Give him full credit. I think he was present in the team of the weekend as part of the substitutes bench, but could have very easily been acknowledged in the starting 4. So an exciting time for Sale United, and I hope they really focus on that young man's development, because he's got an incredibly bright future ahead of him.
I totally agree. Like you say, made the subs bench for the team of the week. That's no mean feat. Obviously got noticed by peers, other coaches and people watching. So watch your space, I suppose, with Sale. A promising weekend for them, even if it didn't quite come out in the results that they wanted. But certainly a side to watch, probably in a false position.
Absolutely.
Right then, on to 9th in the table. Already spoken about their upcoming fixture in the Manchester Derby next weekend. But Manchester City played for goal difference of -7, but 4 points on the board nevertheless. Certainly looked a much more confident and mature side than the team that made their debut last season. And lots of hope and green shoots again for another side.
I'm incredibly excited with Manchester City. Their second season in the WFA National League. There has been a clear progression from the 23-24 season in terms of player performances, in terms of tactics, in terms of game, how they approach each and every game. And for that, I want to give full credit to their coaches, Ross Smith and Brad Heap. One of the youngest squads in the entire National League. I would hazard a guess that their average age would be right around the 14, 15-year-old bracket, which has to be factored in. These are players playing in only their second ever season of National League. And whilst on paper there's some fairly significant defeats to West Bromwich Albion, Dudley and Leeds Dynamos, they're 2 teams in which we would hope would be competing towards the summit of the table. It was Sunday where they just seemed to come into their own. Hull and East Yorkshire relegated from the Premiership, so on paper you would think an easy 3 points for the Yorkshire-based team. It certainly didn't play out that way. Manchester City could have gone on to take 3 points. That one ended 0-0. Before the big dramatic one, Manchester City versus Nottingham Forest, the final game of the weekend. 41st minute and 20 seconds to be specific. They had an indirect free kick. It was finally poised at 0-0, looking like that each Forest and City would take a point apiece. The ball was fed into the box, and it was a beautiful angling of a chair from James Simpson to just guide it past the Nottingham Forest defence to secure them their first win of the season. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to watch it back yet, Alex.
I haven't actually, unfortunately. I didn't know that was quite as dramatic a finish as it was. I was on the other pitch at the time dealing with that one, so I shall look that one up.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. The Lee Westwood Sports Centre erupted. Manchester City brings such fantastic support, and it's no less than they deserved. Full credit to James Simpson as 1 point, but just talking about some of their individual performers, Jay Pixton is their designated goalkeeper. He looks more confident. He looks calm under pressure now, which is a real asset for their side. They've got Sebastian and Oscar Spink. Sebastian Spink was another one who received many votes in the team of the weekend poll, could have very easily been present. There isn't that drop-off when his brother comes into the fray. So, no, I cannot wait to see them going forward and just to see how they develop. I don't think there's a great deal of expectation on their young shoulders. It's just about developing, enjoying their football ultimately. But they've already started the season so brightly and sit just 3 points off their whole 23-24 tally, which I think speaks for itself.
I've just watched the goal back, Ryan.
It's not bad, is it?
That is a fantastic goal. But B, the celebrations also pretty exciting. I don't think I've ever seen a referee's assistant jump quite that high.
That's another matter. That's not necessarily the right protocol and one that will maybe be addressed. But I encourage any and everyone to access that clip via the WFA's YouTube channel. We, of course, stream all of our games live. That one was provided with commentary as well from Dean Williams and Jack Humphreys. But it just shows that literally the last kick of the National League game week 1 was a goal and what a crucial one it could be at that as well. We will know come game week 5 how significant that is. But game week 2 equally as tough for Manchester City. They played Manchester United, as already mentioned, before Villa Rockets Lions, GBG Knights, and a return meeting with Hull and East Yorkshire. So hopefully they're taking huge positives, but they're not resting on their laurels either. They can go back, assess the situation, hopefully come and take some points in game week 2.
Looking forward to seeing how that progresses then. Right, we're getting into the tougher places now for teams. 10th, Nottingham Forest played 5, goal difference of -3 and 3 points on the board. How do you assess their weekend?
Yeah, some tough fixtures, some tough defeats. But like City, there has been a clear progression from the 23-24 campaign. They collectively have got kind of a core group now. They've got players that know the system, that have been coached by Steve Priestley and Anthony Nweke. And let's remember that they only narrowly beat GBG Saracens in the Championship playoff back in July. So it's almost like a bonus year for them in the fact that they were playing a 3-player GBG Saracens and just about scraped through to earn their spot in the 24-25 Optegra Championship. So taking that into consideration, there wasn't a great deal of expectation for them coming into game week 1 or the season as a whole. But I thought that they impressed. And on paper, you can see that there's 4 defeats. But that significant win over AFC Bournemouth Warriors means that they're just above the relegation zone. I think I've said to you, Alex, the stat, the 8 goals in which they scored in that win over AFC Bournemouth Warriors was the exact same as their entire 23-24 tally.
Yeah, certainly a big win for them there. There's another great stat for that particular win, isn't there? So we'll let you reveal that particular stat now.
Yeah, Riley Priestley, what a weekend for that young man. 7 goals in that 8-1 win over AFC Bournemouth Warriors. So 7 goals in a single match, which is the first time that has been achieved in the Championships specifically since 2013. And I've got a question for you, Alex, that I want your guess on. That was Forest's first hat-trick since Matt Smith netted 3 against West Bromwich Albion Dudley in 2017. And the question for you is, in that time, how many hat-tricks have Nottingham Forest conceded?
Wow. Okay.
And so before you answer, I want to give full credit to Jeff Lewis for this. He is an absolute wizard when it comes to stats. He adds so much colour and narrative to our social post, to our commentary, and it's him who's provided this. So full credit to Jeff Lewis, firstly.
So thank you, Jeff, for doing that. Also, that's put me in the spot. So Forest have had a tough few years since 2017. Is that fair to say?
I think it would be an accurate statement.
They've had some toiling seasons. So we've missed a season for the C word, and so that puts us on 1, 2, 3, 6 seasons, 22 games a season, 22 times 6. How many of those games?
I'm going to have to push you for an answer.
I'm going to go with 15.
Nottingham Forest, since 2017, or specifically since Matt Smith scored 3 against West Bromwich Albion Dudley, have conceded 31 hat-tricks.
Wow. That is an impressive stat, but not in a way that flatters Nottingham Forest. But obviously, ending that run, Riley Priestley, absolutely superb.
Yeah, again, congratulations to him. I said there's progression with Nottingham Forest as a whole, and there most definitely is. They've already surpassed their whole goal tally from the 23-24 campaign. They've also sit 1 point behind their entire point tally of the 23-24 campaign. So they're building upon the foundations laid last season. Credit to Ben Rodgers. I thought he was fantastic in the centre. They've got experience in Gary Meakin and other players as well. So excited to see what they can do in game week 2 and beyond. Another really tough weekend. Season play Leeds Dynamos, Teesside Steel, Manchester United, before bottom of the table AFC Bournemouth Warriors. So I'm sure if they're able to secure any points in their first 3 games, it will be seen as a bonus. But I'm sure that final game against the Cherries will be seen as a must-win as they desperately look to claw their way away from the bottom placements for which they have seen themselves occupy for the last few seasons. Next up, the penultimate team in the standings, we have Villa Rockets Lions. 4 games played, 0 games won, 2 games drawn, 2 games lost. So 2 points accrued with a -3 goal difference. Alex, give me your thoughts on Villa Rockets Lions.
Well, we've talked about teams being in false positions a couple of times today. I think this is the team that's in the most false, if that's grammatically incorrect, but nevertheless, I don't see them staying in that bottom 3 as the season goes on. The 2 losses were close, a 1-0 loss to Manchester United and a 2-0 loss to Muscle Warriors. 2 teams that are in the top three, first and third respectively. So they're tough games, and they've narrowly lost them. So I think that's fair enough. The two draws, on the other hand, I think maybe you'd expect them to get a little bit of something from that. So the two losses, in some ways, I would probably say are more heartening and more of a positive for them in some ways than the two draws, where they actually got a point from. Because drawing with Teesside Steel and Sale United 1-1 and 0-0, you'd probably fancy them to try and get something from both of those games, and certainly score a few more goals over the course of the weekend than they have. So only scoring one goal over the weekend is probably a concern. But defensively, 1-0 against Manchester United and 2-0 against Muscle Warriors shows that they're pretty solid and got some good organisation to build on.
Yeah, I think they have the argument for having potentially the toughest weekend on paper, so that needs to be factored in as one point. Another team in transition, sorry for sounding like a broken record, but they've seen many departures and new players come in. They're now overseen by Brad Bates, who will take on the Villa Rockets Lions team for the 24-25 season. It will take time for him to develop his style of play. But I'm sure he'll fall back on his experience with some experienced players in that squad. They've seen Sam Turner come in from Sale United, who was operating as kind of a player coach last season. To the best of my recollection, I believe Sam Turner operated as the goalkeeper for most of Sale United's games. Whereas for Villa Rockets Lions, he was an attacking wide winger that they had Nicky Baker operating as the designated goalkeeper. Narrow margins, as you've already mentioned. Heaviest defeat against Muscle Warriors, who we know just picked apart all of their opposition to secure maximum points across game week 1. So that needs to be factored in, as well as the fact that they've got players on their books that sadly weren't present in game week 1, most notably the acquisition of Naglis Montvillash, who's a Republic of Ireland international who was competing in the 2023 Fit for Power Chair Football World Cup at the back end of last year. Fantastic player, will add so much quality and depth to Brad Bates' side. So I'm unsure as to when he will be present, if he'll be present for game week 2 or beyond that. But he's certainly on their books, and they'll be itching to get him in to contribute to their attacking success. And I think that's where they came unstuck in game week 1. They had a degree of stability in defence. It was just chance creation in attack, but we know Naglis Montvillash will certainly provide goals. Mason Hindley, such a strong player. Some really good professional performances from Mason Hindley. I think it was the game against Teesside, he received a fairly early yellow card, and he's typically known as an aggressive front foot player. But he just took that down a level and was conservative, a little bit more conservative in his approach and his pursuit of possession or get chance creation, and that showed. And that's a progression from last season. He's a year wiser. He's got more experience, and they're going to need that professionalism if they're going to want to go on and achieve things across the remaining 24-25 campaign. They've got a 4-game weekend in November. They start against AFC Bournemouth Warriors, so the perfect opportunity to kickstart with some real momentum. They also play Manchester City, so certainly when you're referencing Saturday's games on the 23rd of November, you would say that anything less than 6 points for them would be seen as a disappointment. And then Sunday, they face Teesside Steel and West Bromwich Albion Dudley. So intrigued to see how they get on, but I think it's exciting times ahead for them.
Indeed, a good summation there, I think, for their first weekend, and looking forward for them as well. So finally, bottom of the table, tough weekend for AFC Bournemouth Warriors. Played for 0.0, goal difference of -27. Despite that, one of their players received the Unsung Hero award for the weekend, and that is Chris King.
Yeah, Chris, just the epitome of hard work, dedication, professionalism. He is an incredible person. He's an incredible player, and he just never gives up. So he was the standout in terms of getting that recognition on Monday. So full credit to him. Again, context to be applied. A team bringing in new players. Congratulations to Roxy Berry and Connor Boswell. I think making and marking their National League debuts. So positives, a team in development. That they've seen the departure of Jack Ewins to GBG Knights also. But I'm just hoping that they can take the positives. They can see the commitment of Chris King. The coaches are really trying to work with what they've got. And it will take time for their younger players to understand the pace and the intensity of the National League. And hopefully they can go back to the drawing board and come back stronger in game week 2.
I think that's an important point to make. It's impossible to prepare for the National League if you've never played at that standard.
Completely.
The only way you can get used to it is by being in it. The pace is different, the pressure is different, the intensity is a different level than anything they'll have played in before. And like you say, that takes a bit of time to get used to. So that's okay. That's all expected and part of their development as a team and as players. So best of luck to them for the rest of the season.
Yeah, completely.
Right, I think we've wrapped up all the teams, looked through the whole table and assessed where they're at, where they're heading for the season, hopefully. And it's exciting times. We've got a great season in the Optegra Championship to look forward to.
Yeah, brilliant recap. Excited to get these podcasts back up and running again. We will look to fill the space between now and the game week 1 of the 24-25 Optegra Premiership with some guests, but we're committed to providing some really good insights and episodes coming forward, and that is thanks to our new sponsors, MK Battery. We're really proud to have them with us. But thank you everyone that's listening, and we'll see you next time on the 2-on-1 Power Chair Football Podcast, powered by MK Battery.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. See you soon.